The morning started like any other Tuesday for Jake Martinez. He walked to school with his backpack hanging off one shoulder, headphones playing his favorite rock music. The 17-year-old had no idea that this would be the day everything changed forever. Jake lived in Millbrook, a small town in Colorado with about 8,000 people. Most folks worked at the nearby military base or the local factory. Nothing exciting ever happened there. The biggest news in months was when Mrs. Peterson's cat got stuck in a tree. As Jake walked past the old water tower, he noticed something strange in the sky. At first, he thought it was just a plane or maybe a helicopter from the base. But the object moved too smoothly and made no sound at all. It was silver and shaped like a teardrop, about the size of a school bus. He stopped walking and pulled out his phone to record it. The object hovered for about 30 seconds, then shot straight up and disappeared into the clouds faster than anything he had ever seen. Jake stared at the empty sky, wondering if he had imagined the whole thing. At school, Jake tried to tell his friends about what he saw, but nobody believed him. His best friend Tommy laughed and said he probably saw a weather balloon. Sarah, the girl he had a crush on, just rolled her eyes and walked away. Even his science teacher, Mr. Roberts, seemed skeptical when Jake described the object during lunch. But Jake knew what he had seen. That night, he uploaded the video to social media. The quality was not great because his phone was old, but you could clearly see the silver object in the sky. Within hours, the video had hundreds of views and dozens of comments. Some people called it fake, others said it was just a drone or experimental aircraft. 3 days later, everything changed. Jake was sitting in his bedroom doing homework when the first ships appeared. But these were not like the small object he had seen earlier. These were massive, dark vessels that blotted out the stars. They appeared silently over major cities around the world. News channels went crazy trying to cover the story. The ships just hung there in the sky, doing nothing. World leaders held emergency meetings. Scientists scrambled to understand what was happening. Religious groups claimed it was the end times. Stock markets crashed. People panicked and bought emergency supplies. Jake watched it all on his laptop, feeling a strange mix of fear and excitement. He had been right about the alien craft. But now he wished he had been wrong. On the second day of the arrival, the aliens made contact. They broadcasted a message simultaneously to every television, radio, and internet connection on Earth. The voice spoke perfect English, but also seemed to speak every other language at the same time. "People of Earth," the voice said, calm and emotionless. "We are the Krex Collective. Your planet contains resources we require. You have 72 hours to evacuate your major population centers. After this time, we will begin harvesting operations. Resistance will be met with force. This is not a negotiation." The world exploded into chaos. Governments tried to organize evacuations, but there was nowhere near enough time or transportation. Military forces around the globe prepared for war, even though they had no idea what they were fighting against. Jake's father, who worked security at the nearby Cheyenne Mountain Complex, came home that evening looking grim. He told Jake and his mother that they needed to pack immediately and head to his uncle's ranch in Wyoming. "Dad, what's really happening?" Jake asked as they loaded supplies into their truck. His father paused and looked at him seriously. "Son, our satellites detected more ships coming. Hundreds of them. And these ones are different. They're smaller, faster. We think they're military vessels." That night, as they drove through the dark mountains toward Wyoming, Jake saw flashes of light on the horizon. The invasion had begun. By morning, news reports painted a terrible picture. The aliens had landed troops in major cities worldwide. Their soldiers were tall, thin creatures wearing advanced armor that seemed to absorb bullets. They carried weapons that fired beams of energy, turning buildings to ash in seconds. Human military forces fought bravely but were completely outmatched. Tank rounds bounced off alien vehicles like pebbles. Fighter jets were shot down before they could even get close. Nuclear weapons were attempted in some areas, but the alien ships had shields that absorbed the explosions completely. Jake's uncle's ranch was in a remote valley surrounded by mountains. They thought they would be safe there, hidden away from the main population centers. For 3 days, they watched the news reports grow worse and worse. City after city fell to the alien forces. Then, the power went out. Jake's father tried the radio, but found only static. Cell phone towers had been destroyed. They were completely cut off from the outside world. On the 4th day, they saw smoke rising from the direction of the nearest town, about 50 miles away. Jake's uncle Mark, a former Navy SEAL, decided to take his motorcycle and scout the area. He never came back. Jake's father wanted to go look for Mark, but Jake's mother begged him not to leave them alone. They argued about it for hours. Finally, Jake made a decision that would change everything. "I'll go," he said quietly during dinner. "I'm the fastest runner, and I know these mountains better than anyone. I can move quietly and get back here to report what I find." "Absolutely not," his father said immediately. "You're just a kid. This is too dangerous." But Jake had made up his mind. That night, while his parents slept, he packed a small backpack with water, energy bars, and his grandfather's old hunting knife. He left a note explaining that he would be back in 2 days, and slipped out into the darkness. The mountains at night were cold and quiet. Jake had hiked these trails dozens of times with his father and uncle, so he knew the way even in the dark. He moved carefully, using a small red flashlight that would not be visible from far away. As he got closer to town, he began to smell smoke. Then, he heard sounds that made his blood run cold. Strange clicking noises, like giant insects talking to each other. And, underneath that, something that sounded almost like screaming, but not quite human. Jake crept to the edge of a ridge overlooking the town of Riverside. What he saw below made him understand just how hopeless humanity's situation had become. The town was burning. But not from bombs or explosions. The buildings were being systematically destroyed by creatures in dark armor. The aliens were about 8 feet tall and moved with disturbing grace. Their heads were elongated, and Jake could see multiple eyes reflecting the firelight. But worse than the destruction was what the aliens were doing to the people. They had rounded up the survivors and were herding them toward large, box-like vehicles. Jake could see children crying and adults trying to comfort them. The aliens pushed anyone who moved too slowly with weapons that crackled with electricity. As Jake watched in horror, one of the aliens turned and looked directly at his hiding spot. For a moment, their eyes met across the distance. The creature tilted its head, almost like it was curious. Then, it raised a device and pointed it in Jake's direction. A beam of red light swept across the ridge where Jake was hidden. He flattened himself against the rocks, holding his breath. The light passed over him twice, then moved on. The alien seemed to lose interest and returned to its work. Jake realized he needed to get back and warn his family immediately. But, as he started to crawl backward, he noticed something that made him freeze. One of the vehicles the aliens were using had a familiar logo on its side. It was a truck from the Riverside Fire Department. But, it had been modified with alien technology. The aliens were not just conquering Earth. They were adapting human technology for their own use. And if they could do that, maybe humans could learn to use alien technology too. Jake spent another hour watching and learning. He saw how the aliens communicated using hand signals. He noticed that their armor had weak points at the joints. Most importantly, he observed that they seemed to rely heavily on their scanning devices. When those devices did not detect threats, the aliens became less cautious. By the time Jake made it back to the ranch, the sun was coming up. His parents were awake and frantic with worry. His father was preparing to organize a search party. "Jake! Where have you been?" his mother cried, hugging him tightly. Jake quickly told them what he had seen. His father listened grimly, then sat down heavily at the kitchen table. "So that's it then," his father said. "We're beaten. We should surrender and hope they treat prisoners well." But Jake shook his head. No, Dad. I think there might be a way to fight back. But we're going to need help, and we're going to need to be very smart about it. His father looked at him with new respect. What did you have in mind, son? Jake pulled out a small device he had picked up near the alien vehicles. It was about the size of a smartphone, but made of material that seemed to shift color in the light. I think this is some kind of communication device, Jake said. And I think I know how to use it. Jake spent the next 2 days studying the alien device he had found. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The surface felt warm and seemed to respond to his touch. When he pressed certain areas, symbols appeared that looked like a combination of mathematics and art. His father remained skeptical. Son, even if you figure out how that thing works, what can one teenager do against an entire alien army? But Jake remembered something his grandfather had told him before he died. Sometimes the smallest person can make the biggest difference, because nobody sees them coming. Jake had always been good with electronics. He had built his own computer and fixed phones for kids at school. This alien technology was more advanced, but it followed similar principles. After countless hours of experimentation, he finally managed to activate the device. The screen lit up with what looked like a map. Jake could see red dots moving around what appeared to be the local area. He realized he was looking at the positions of alien forces. This was not just a communication device, it was a tactical display used by alien commanders. Dad, come look at this, Jake called excitedly. His father studied the display, and his military training kicked in immediately. These numbers here, they look like troop strength indicators. And this section might be supply routes. Jake had discovered something incredible. The device showed him that the alien force in their area was much smaller than they had assumed. Only about 50 soldiers were controlling a territory that stretched across 3 counties. They were spread very thin. More importantly, Jake could see their patrol patterns. The aliens moved in predictable routes, checking certain locations at specific times. They were efficient but also somewhat mechanical in their approach. They're overconfident, Jake realized. They think humans are too primitive to pose any real threat, so they're not being as careful as they should be. That night, Jake convinced his father to help him with a reconnaissance mission. They would use the alien device to track patrol patterns and see if they could find other survivors. His mother was terrified, but she understood that hiding at the ranch would not keep them safe forever. Jake and his father moved through the mountains using trails that only locals would know. The alien device guided them around enemy patrols. They discovered something that filled them with hope: there were other survivors scattered throughout the area. At an abandoned mining camp, they found a group of 12 people led by Sarah Chen, a former army medic. At another location, they contacted a family of 5 who had been living in a cave for 2 weeks. Slowly, Jake began building a network of survivors who were willing to fight back. The key was the alien technology Jake had learned to use. He discovered that the device could do more than just show enemy positions. It could also intercept alien communications and even disrupt their equipment temporarily. How is a 17-year-old kid better at using alien tech than trained military personnel? Sarah Chen asked one evening as they planned their first operation. Jake thought about it seriously before answering. Maybe because I don't assume it has to be complicated. Adults often think advanced means difficult. But good design is usually simple, even when the technology is sophisticated. Their first mission was to rescue a group of prisoners being held in Riverside. Jake had observed that every 3 days, a transport vehicle came to collect captured humans. The vehicle always took the same route and was guarded by only 4 alien soldiers. Jake's plan was simple but risky. They would use the alien device to create a false signal that would make the transport think it needed to stop for repairs. While the guards investigated the fake malfunction, Jake and 2 other volunteers would free the prisoners. The night of the operation, Jake felt more nervous than he had ever been in his life. But when he saw the alien transport approaching exactly as predicted, his fear transformed into determination. Jake activated the device and sent a maintenance signal to the transport. Just as he had hoped, the vehicle stopped, and 3 of the 4 guards got out to examine their equipment. The 4th guard remained with the prisoners. Jake crept around to the back of the transport while Sarah and another survivor created a distraction. When the remaining guard moved to investigate the noise, Jake disabled the lock on the prison compartment using a tool he had improvised from alien technology. 15 people stumbled out of the transport, men, women, and children who had been captured during the initial invasion. They were weakened, scared, but alive. "Run toward the mountains," Jake whispered urgently. "Follow the blue lights." His father had positioned small LED markers along an escape route that led to a safe house they had established in an old ranger station. The rescued prisoners moved as quickly as they could while Jake and his team covered their retreat. The operation was a complete success. Not only had they rescued 15 people, but Jake had also managed to steal additional alien equipment, including 2 more communication devices and what appeared to be a weapon. Word of the rescue spread quickly among the survivor network. People began to whisper about the kid who could speak alien and the boy who was not afraid to fight back. But Jake knew that their success would make the aliens more cautious. He was right. Within days, alien patrols doubled in the area. The enemy had realized that organized resistance was developing. Jake studied the new patrol patterns and made a disturbing discovery. The aliens were systematically searching for their base of operations. It was only a matter of time before they were found. "We need to change tactics," Jake told the group of survivors who now looked to him for leadership. "We cannot keep hiding and hoping they will leave us alone. We need to go on the offensive." Some of the adults were uncomfortable taking orders from a teenager, but Jake had proven himself. More importantly, he was the only one who could effectively use the alien technology they had captured. Jake's next plan was much more ambitious. He wanted to attack the alien command post in Riverside and capture their main communication hub. If successful, they could coordinate with resistance groups across the region and maybe even contact what remained of the military. "That's suicide," one of the survivors protested. "There are at least 20 aliens at that facility." "Yes," Jake agreed. "But they will not expect an attack from humans using their own technology against them. And they definitely will not expect it to be led by someone my age." Jake spent a week preparing for the mission. He trained other survivors to use the alien devices, showing them how to disrupt enemy communications and create false signals. He also figured out how to modify the alien weapon he had captured. The weapon was designed for aliens who had different hand shapes than humans, but Jake rigged a new grip and trigger mechanism. More importantly, he learned that the weapon had multiple settings, including one that could overload alien electronics. 3 nights before the planned attack, Jake made another solo reconnaissance trip to Riverside. He needed to update his intelligence on the alien positions and defenses. What he found changed everything. The aliens had not just fortified their command post, they had turned the entire town into a processing center. Hundreds of human prisoners were being held in converted buildings. Worse, Jake observed aliens loading groups of prisoners onto large spacecraft that arrived every few hours. The aliens were not just conquering Earth, they were harvesting its population. And Jake realized with growing horror that his own actions had accelerated their timeline. Because of the rescue operations, the aliens had decided to expedite their collection efforts. But Jake also noticed something that gave him hope. The massive increase in prisoner processing had stretched the alien forces very thin. Most of their soldiers were busy with logistics and crowd control. The actual security around the command center was lighter than it had been before. Jake made a decision that would have terrified his parents if they had known about it. Instead of attacking the command center to capture communications equipment, he was going to attempt something far more dangerous. He was going to try to disable the entire alien operation in the region. He had noticed that all the alien technology seemed to be connected to a central power source located beneath the command center. If he could find a way to overload that power source, it might disable all alien equipment in the area simultaneously. It was an insane plan with almost no chance of success. But Jake looked at the hundreds of prisoners being loaded onto alien ships and knew he had to try. The next morning, Jake told his father and the other survivors that he needed to make one more reconnaissance trip alone. He did not tell them his real plan because he knew they would try to stop him. Instead of gathering intelligence, Jake was going to infiltrate the alien command center and attempt to destroy their entire operation single-handedly. He had no backup plan and no exit strategy. If he failed, he would probably be killed or captured. But, as Jake prepared his equipment and checked his improvised alien tools one last time, he felt surprisingly calm. For weeks, everyone had been telling him that humans could not win against such advanced aliens. Jake was about to prove them wrong. He thought about all the people counting on him, his parents, the survivors he had helped rescue, the hundreds of prisoners waiting to be taken to alien ships. He thought about his grandfather's words about how small people could make big differences. Jake was just one teenager with stolen alien technology and a plan that probably would not work. But, sometimes, that was enough to change the course of history. As the sun set on what might be his last day on Earth, Jake Martinez began the most important mission of his young life. Jake approached the alien command center just after midnight, when the facility was at its quietest. He had spent hours studying the patrol patterns through the alien device, timing his approach to coincide with a shift change. The building had once been Riverside City Hall, but the aliens had transformed it completely. Strange metal structures jutted from the roof, crackling with energy. The walls glowed faintly with embedded alien technology. Most intimidating of all were the two tall sentries standing guard at the main entrance. Jake had observed these guards for several nights. They wore heavier armor than the regular soldiers and carried weapons that hummed with power. But he had also noticed their weakness: they relied completely on their scanning equipment to detect threats. When the scanners showed nothing dangerous, the guards became almost motionless. Using techniques he had learned from studying the alien communication device, Jake activated a signal that would make him invisible to their sensors. The technology was not perfect; it would only work for about 15 minutes before the alien systems adapted. But 15 minutes might be enough. Jake slipped past the guards and found a service entrance on the building's east side. The alien lock system used the same type of interface as the communication devices he had learned to operate. After several tense minutes, the door clicked open. Inside, the building was completely alien. The floors had been replaced with a material that felt spongy under his feet. The walls pulsed with veins of light that provided illumination. The air smelled like ozone and something else Jake could not identify, something metallic and sharp. Jake moved carefully through corridors that seemed to shift and change as he watched. He realized that the entire building was not just occupied by aliens, it had been transformed into alien technology itself. Following the energy readings on his device, Jake made his way deeper into the structure. He passed rooms filled with floating screens showing Earth locations from around the globe. Other rooms contained equipment he could not begin to understand, machines that twisted space around them and devices that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The deeper he went, the more Jake understood the true scope of what humanity was facing. This was not just an invasion, it was a complete technological transformation of the planet. The aliens were not just taking resources, they were converting Earth itself into something else. In the building's lower levels, Jake found what he was looking for. A massive chamber housed the central power core that fed energy to all alien operations in the region. The core was beautiful and terrifying, a sphere of contained energy about the size of a school bus, floating in the center of the room and surrounded by control mechanisms. But Jake was not alone in the chamber. An alien stood with its back to him, manipulating controls that Jake could not see clearly. This was not a regular soldier, it was taller and wearing different armor. Jake realized he was looking at one of the alien commanders. For a moment, Jake considered retreating and trying a different approach. But then, the commander turned around, and Jake found himself face to face with his enemy for the first time. The alien's head was elongated and covered with smooth, dark skin. It had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and its mouth was a horizontal slit that revealed rows of sharp teeth. When it spoke, the words came from a device on its chest, translating alien thoughts into English. "Human child," the alien said, its voice emotionless but somehow amused. We detected you the moment you entered our facility. Did you truly believe your primitive technology could hide you from us? Jake's heart sank. His signal jamming device had been detected after all. But he tried to keep his voice steady as he responded. If you knew I was here, why did you let me get this far? The alien tilted its head, studying Jake with all four eyes. Curiosity. We have been monitoring your recent activities. You have shown unusual adaptability with our technology. We wished to observe you more closely. Jake realized that this conversation was his only chance to learn something useful before his plan completely fell apart. Why are you doing this? Why invade Earth? Invasion? The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. Child, you misunderstand completely. We are not invading your world. We are harvesting it. Your species has reached the optimal point in its development cycle. Optimal for what? For integration into our collective. Your people possess qualities we require: creativity, adaptability, emotional range. These traits will be preserved and utilized efficiently within our greater purpose. Jake felt sick as he understood what the alien was telling him. Humanity was not being destroyed, it was being absorbed. The prisoners were not being killed, they were being transformed into something else entirely. You're turning people into slaves, Jake said angrily. Slaves? The alien seemed genuinely puzzled by the concept. No. They will become part of something far greater than they could achieve alone. Your resistance demonstrates the very qualities that make your species valuable. Jake gripped the modified alien weapon hidden in his jacket. He had one chance to destroy the power core, but the alien commander was standing directly between him and the controls. What about the ones who do not want to be part of your collective? Jake asked, trying to position himself for a clear shot at the core. Want is irrelevant. Improvement is inevitable. The alien moved closer to Jake, studying him intently. You, however, present an interesting case. Your facility with our technology suggests exceptional neural plasticity. You would integrate very successfully. Jake realized the alien was trying to capture him alive rather than simply killing him. That gave him a small advantage. Thanks, but I will pass, Jake said, pulling out the weapon and firing at the control panel nearest to the power core. The energy beam struck the controls, causing sparks and alarms to sound throughout the facility. But, instead of exploding or shutting down, the power core simply shifted to backup systems. The alien commander moved faster than Jake thought possible, crossing the room in 2 long strides. Jake rolled aside as massive clawed hands swept through the space where he had been standing. Foolish child, the alien said, no longer sounding amused. You cannot damage systems you do not understand. Jake fired again, this time at the alien itself. The energy beam struck the commander's armor and was absorbed completely. Jake realized with growing panic that his weapon was useless against the advanced armor. But, as the alien advanced on him, Jake noticed something important. The power core was not just feeding energy to alien equipment, it was also maintaining the environmental systems that allowed the aliens to survive on Earth. If he could not destroy it directly, maybe he could overload it. Jake had learned that alien technology was designed for efficiency and integration. That meant all their systems were connected. If he could create a feedback loop in one system, it might cascade through all of them. Instead of firing at the alien or the power core, Jake aimed at a seemingly minor control panel on the wall. This panel was connected to the atmospheric processors that maintained the alien environment inside the building. When Jake's weapon hit the atmospheric controls, the results were immediate and dramatic. Warning lights flashed throughout the chamber, and the air itself seemed to shimmer and change. The alien commander stopped advancing and rushed to emergency controls, speaking rapidly in its own language. Jake realized he had done more than just damage a minor system. The atmospheric disruption was affecting the power core's stability. The floating sphere began to pulse erratically, and energy discharges arced between it and the surrounding equipment. What have you done? The alien demanded, working frantically at multiple control panels simultaneously. Jake did not answer. Instead, he fired at every piece of equipment he could see, creating as much chaos and system damage as possible. Each shot caused more alarms and more instability in the power core. The alien commander finally abandoned its attempts to save the failing systems and lunged directly at Jake. But the environmental disruption was affecting the alien as well. Its movements were becoming sluggish, and Jake could see it struggling to breathe. Jake dodged the alien's attack and ran toward the chamber's exit. Behind him, the power core was beginning to emit a high-pitched whining sound that made his teeth ache. Sparks flew from every piece of equipment in the room. As Jake reached the exit, the alien commander made one last desperate attempt to stop him. Clawed hands grabbed Jake's backpack, tearing it from his shoulders. The alien spoke urgently into its communication device, probably calling for backup. But Jake was already running up the stairs toward the surface, leaving his equipment behind. The building shook around him as more systems failed. Emergency lighting flickered on and off. Somewhere below, the power core's whining grew louder and more unstable. Jake burst out of the building and sprinted toward the mountains. Behind him, every piece of alien equipment in Riverside was beginning to malfunction. Patrol vehicles stopped working. Communication towers went dark. Even the alien soldiers' personal armor started displaying error messages. Jake had not destroyed the power core, but he had done something potentially more important. He had proven that alien technology could be disrupted by someone who understood how to exploit its integrated design. As Jake ran through the darkness toward the mountains, he heard explosions behind him. The alien command center was tearing itself apart as cascading system failures spread throughout their equipment. But Jake also knew that his victory was temporary. The aliens would repair their systems and adapt their defenses. They would be looking for him now, and they would not underestimate human capabilities again. However, Jake had accomplished something that would change everything. He had shown that the aliens were not invincible. More importantly, he had learned how their technology worked well enough to disrupt it. As Jake reached the foothills and began climbing towards safety, he realized that this was not the end of his mission. It was just the beginning. He had the knowledge to teach other humans how to fight back effectively. The war for Earth was far from over, but, for the first time, humans had a real chance to win. Jake reached the survivor camp just as the sun was rising over the mountains. His clothes were torn and he was exhausted, but his eyes blazed with excitement and determination. The other survivors gathered around him as he stumbled into the clearing where they had hidden their supplies. Jake, his father called out, rushing to embrace his son. "We heard explosions all night." "What happened?" Jake quickly explained what he had discovered and accomplished at the alien command center. As he spoke, the implications became clear to everyone listening. The aliens were not just invading, they were transforming Earth and its people into something completely different. "But, you stopped them, right?" asked Sarah Chen, the former army medic. "You destroyed their power source?" Jake shook his head. "I disrupted it, but they will repair the damage within days, maybe hours. However, I learned something more valuable than temporary sabotage. I know how their technology works now, and, more importantly, I know how to teach others to use it against them." Over the next several hours, Jake shared everything he had learned. The alien systems were incredibly advanced but also highly integrated. That integration was both their greatest strength and their most significant weakness. If you understood the connections between systems, you could create cascade failures that would cripple entire installations. Jake also explained what the alien commander had told him about the true purpose of the invasion. Humanity was being harvested for specific qualities: creativity, adaptability, and emotional range. The aliens saw these traits as resources to be collected and utilized. "They think they can just take what makes us human and use it for their own purposes," said Tom Brady, an older survivor who had been an engineer before the invasion. "They do not understand that those qualities cannot be separated from our freedom." Jake nodded. "That is exactly why we can beat them. They are so focused on efficiency and control that they cannot adapt the way humans can. They follow patterns and protocols. We can improvise." The group decided that their priority had to be rescuing as many prisoners as possible before the aliens could transport them off-world. But they also needed to spread the knowledge Jake had gained to other resistance groups around the world. Using the alien communication devices Jake had captured, they made contact with survivor groups across North America. The news was mixed. Some areas had been completely overrun, but, in many places, small groups of humans were fighting back with increasing effectiveness. Jake taught other survivors how to use alien technology through remote instruction. It was slow and difficult, but gradually a network of human resistance began to form. The key was understanding that alien technology responded to specific types of electromagnetic patterns that could be generated by modified human electronics. 3 days after Jake's mission to the command center, alien forces began a systematic search of the mountains around Riverside. Jake realized that his attack had made their small group a priority target. The aliens were no longer treating human resistance as a minor annoyance. "We need to evacuate this position," Jake told the group. "But first, we have one more chance to hurt them badly." Jake had been monitoring alien communications and discovered something significant. A large transport ship was scheduled to arrive in 2 days to collect all the prisoners being held in the region. If they could disable that ship, they could free hundreds of people at once. The plan Jake developed was the most ambitious operation any human resistance group had attempted. They would coordinate attacks on alien installations across 3 counties simultaneously, forcing the aliens to spread their defensive forces thin. Then, while the aliens were distracted, Jake and a small team would infiltrate the landing site and sabotage the transport ship. Preparing for the operation took every piece of alien technology they had captured and every survivor who was willing to fight. Jake spent hours training people to use improvised weapons created from alien components and human electronics. Sarah Chain became Jake's lieutenant, coordinating the medical support and evacuation procedures. Tom Brady led the team responsible for creating diversionary attacks. Jake's father insisted on being part of the main assault team, despite Jake's objections. "Son, you have done more than anyone could have asked," his father said seriously. "But you are not doing this alone anymore." The night before the operation, Jake could not sleep. He sat outside the cave where they had established their new base, looking up at the stars and thinking about everything that had happened. A month ago, he had been a normal teenager worried about homework and whether Sarah from school liked him. Now he was leading a military operation against advanced aliens. His mother sat down beside him, something she had not done since he was a small child. "Are you scared?" she asked quietly. Jake considered the question honestly. "Terrified," he admitted. "But also excited? I know that sounds crazy, but I feel like this is what I was meant to do. Like everything that happened before was just preparation for this." His mother nodded. "Your grandfather would be proud of you. He always said you had the potential to do something extraordinary." The next morning, Jake's teams moved into position around the alien landing site. The location was a flat area about 10 miles from Riverside that the aliens had cleared and equipped with landing platforms. Jake could see the massive transport ship descending from orbit, its hull gleaming in the morning sunlight. The diversionary attacks began exactly on schedule. Explosions and electromagnetic pulses disrupted alien installations across the region. As Jake had predicted, alien forces rushed to respond to the multiple threats, leaving the landing site with minimal security. Jake and his assault team approached the transport ship from the north, moving through a series of drainage ditches that provided cover. The ship was even larger up close, easily the size of a football stadium and covered with weapons that could probably level a city. But Jake had learned that size and power were not always advantages. Large systems had more points of failure, and the aliens' confidence in their technology made them careless about protecting critical components. Jake's target was the ship's atmospheric processing system. From his experience at the command center, he knew that disrupting life support would force the ship to make emergency repairs before it could leave Earth's atmosphere. Getting inside the ship required skills that Jake had developed over weeks of studying alien technology. He used a combination of captured access codes and electromagnetic interference to convince the ship's security systems that his team was part of the regular crew. Once inside, Jake was amazed by the ship's interior. Vast chambers were filled with holding cells designed to transport thousands of prisoners. Other areas contained equipment for processing and converting human biology. Jake realized he was looking at a factory designed to transform people into something else entirely. But there was no time to study the alien technology in detail. Jake's team had only minutes before the diversionary attacks ended and alien forces returned to the landing site. Jake found the atmospheric control center and began implementing the same cascade failure technique he had used at the command center. But this time, he had help. His father and Tom Brady worked on secondary systems while Sarah Chen watched for enemy patrols. The results exceeded Jake's expectations. The atmospheric disruption did not just affect life support, it triggered safety protocols throughout the entire ship. Blast doors sealed automatically. Emergency systems activated. The ship's artificial intelligence began emergency shutdown procedures to protect the vessel from what it interpreted as catastrophic system damage. "Jake, we need to go now," Sarah Chen called urgently. "I can see alien vehicles approaching." Jake made a split-second decision that changed the course of the entire mission. Instead of escaping immediately, he ran toward the ship's prisoner holding area. If the ship was going to be temporarily disabled anyway, this might be their only chance to free the people trapped inside. The holding cells contained more than 300 prisoners, men, women, and children who had been captured over the past several weeks. When Jake activated the emergency release system, the cells opened simultaneously. "Everyone out!" Jake shouted. "Head for the mountains. Follow the people with red armbands." Chaos erupted as hundreds of people stumbled out of the ship. Some were too weak to run. Others were confused and frightened. But Jake's team had prepared for this possibility. Survivors from the resistance groups were positioned to guide escapees to safety. Jake remained inside the ship until the last prisoner had escaped, then ran for the exit himself. Behind him, alien security systems were beginning to adapt to the sabotage. Emergency repairs were starting automatically. As Jake emerged from the ship, he found himself face to face with the same alien commander he had encountered at the command center. The creature looked at Jake with what might have been respect mixed with frustration. "You continue to surprise us, human child," the alien said through its translation device. "Your species' unpredictability is indeed a valuable trait." "Valuable enough to leave us alone?" Jake asked, backing slowly toward the tree line where his father was waiting. "Unfortunately, no. Your actions have demonstrated that your people require more direct supervision during the integration process. But, you, specifically, will be studied carefully. Your neural patterns will be most instructive." Jake realized that the alien was not trying to capture him for punishment, it wanted to study him to understand human adaptability. That knowledge would be used to make the integration process more effective. "I do not think so," Jake said, pulling out a device he had prepared for exactly this situation. The device was not a weapon, it was a communication transmitter that would broadcast everything Jake had learned about alien technology to resistance groups around the world. Instructions for disrupting alien systems, weaknesses in their equipment, and, most importantly, proof that humans could fight back successfully. Jake activated the transmitter and spoke clearly, "This is Jake Martinez. Humanity can win this war. Here is how." As Jake transmitted technical specifications and tactical advice to human resistance groups across the globe, the alien commander realized what was happening. It lunged forward to stop the broadcast, but Jake's father emerged from the tree line with several other survivors, providing covering fire. The transmission lasted only 30 seconds, but it contained everything needed for humans to begin effective resistance operations worldwide. Within hours, alien installations on every continent would come under coordinated attack from humans using their own technology against them. Jake and his team escaped into the mountains as alien reinforcements arrived at the landing site. Behind them, the massive transport ship remained grounded, its systems still recovering from Jake's sabotage. That night, as they established a new camp deeper in the wilderness, Jake received confirmation that his broadcast had been successful. Resistance groups around the world reported successful attacks on alien facilities. More importantly, hundreds of prisoners had been freed in coordinated operations. The war was far from over. The aliens would adapt their tactics and technology to counter human resistance. But they had made a critical error in underestimating human creativity and determination. As Jake looked up at the stars, he realized that humanity had achieved something the aliens had not expected. They had learned to fight as one species rather than as separate nations. The invasion had unified Earth in a way that nothing else could have accomplished. Jake Martinez, the 17-year-old who had started this journey as a normal student in a small Colorado town, had become something unprecedented in human history, a teenager who had taught his entire species how to wage war against a technologically superior enemy. The aliens had come to harvest humanity's best qualities. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous: human ingenuity combined with the absolute determination to remain free. Earth's real fight for independence was just beginning, and Jake would be there to lead it.